The Mechanical Menagerie is the 5th boss of the Gnomeregan Raid in Season of Discovery Phase 2. The boss is comprised of 4 mechanical constructs, each with their own health pools and sets of abilities. You can find this boss in the final room of the dungeon, and it must be defeated before you can take on Mech Engineer Thermoplug. First off, we've got STX-13/LL. This is the Sheep. The Sheep has 3 abilities. Whenever it reaches 75%, 50%, and 25% health, it's going to activate Frayed Wiring. This imbues the Sheep, as well as any of the other bosses that are close to it, with a Thorns-based ability, causing all damage dealt to the target to reflect damage back at you. The Sheep's second ability is Binary Bleat. This causes it to pulse out damage around it that silences targets. The Sheep's final ability is Static Fleece. Any melee attack against the Sheep has a chance to stun the attacker. With all of this in mind, this means that the Sheep must be tanked by a ranged ally. The ranged ally must kite the Sheep around the room, keeping it out of range of the other mobs. Because of the AoE silence, as well as its spell reflect whenever it gets low, you want to make sure that the Sheep is kept away. The second boss is STX-25/NB, or the Squirrel. The Squirrel has 2 abilities. The first is Widget Volley. This is a 2-second cast that then hurls widgets towards the target, dealing damage to them and interrupting their spell casting. You need to notice if you are the target of Widget Volley and stop all casts before the effect hits you. At 75, 50, and 25% health, the Squirrel is going to drop a repair zone on the ground, which greatly reduces the damage dealt to any of the mobs within it. You need to move the rest of the group out of the Squirrel's Widget Fortress to stop this damage reduction. The Squirrel does a small amount of damage and must be tanked by one of your 2 tanks. Third up is STX-04/BD, or the Whelp. Occasionally, the Whelp picks one player, turns towards them, and begins channeling Socket Fire Breath. This is a cone-based fire attack that will channel for a short duration. Allies need to be paying attention to where the Whelp is at, and getting out of that fiery effect before it goes off. At 75, 50, and 25% health, this boss is going to give itself, as well as all nearby bosses, overheat, which causes AoE fire damage for 15 yards around the target. When this goes out, all melee need to get away from whichever boss has the buff to make sure that you're not taking that constant damage. You definitely don't want more than 2 of the mobs to gain this effect, so you need to keep the Whelp and the Squirrel together while keeping the Sheep and the Chicken away from them. The final boss is STX-37/CN, or the Chicken. The Chicken's main effect is Explosive Egg. Periodically throughout the fight, it's going to drop a small egg onto the ground, and after a delay, the egg explodes for raid-wide damage. DPS need to switch to this egg and burn it down as soon as it spawns to make sure it never pulses. At 75, 50, and 25% health, the Chicken is going to cast Cluck. This gives itself, as well as all nearby bosses, 50% increase to attack speed. This is a significant buff to the damage output of the different bosses, so you need to make sure the Chicken is never in range of the other 2 tanked bosses when it's at those health percentages. The basic strategy of this boss fight is to start at the outer section of the arena, gain threat on each of them, and then rotate clockwise around the outside of the room, keeping the Drake and Squirrel furthest ahead, then the Chicken, and then finally the Sheep. The Sheep has a very slow movement speed, so it should be easy to keep it kited behind the group. There is a lot of damage that goes out in this fight, and it's quite a long fight. You need to kill each of these guys within 30 seconds of each other, or they begin channeling repair and they'll pop back up with a chunk of health. That should be everything you need to know to take down Mechanical Menagerie. I'm Zesty Fresh with Zaza Games, and we'll catch you guys next time.